So in the 5th century BC, there was a king named Croesus. He was the king of a nation called Lydia, which they say would have been one of the greatest nations had things gone more their way. His capital was in Sardis. It would be in what we call Asia Minor, or Turkey, that area. And when he was trying to establish his kingdom, he marched westward toward Greece first. And he conquered Asia Minor. And he conquered all the land. And then he decided to build himself some boats and try to start and begin to go even further westward by capturing first the island nations. When he was building the boats, a Greek came and visited him, one of his guest friends, and he said, "What's the news from Greece?" And the guest friend told Croesus that the islanders were buying tens of thousands of horses in preparation to invade the mainland and come and try to conquer Sardis. Now, the islanders having to buy the horses, this implies that they had no experience in land war. And Croesus said, "This is the best thing that's happened to me today." He was thrilled to find out that these islanders were going to try to come to his turf and beat him up, because he knew he'd win. That's when the Greek pointed out that, "What do you think, Croesus? The Greeks on the islands thought when they heard you were building ships to come attack them." Croesus understood the value of this point, and he stopped his shipbuilding there. There are times when every single one of us makes a mistake. Sometimes it takes somebody else to point out the mistake that we're making. When this happens, the wise person listens to the point that's being made and accepts it. As Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel." That's what today's lesson is about. I know last week I finished, and I said next week I'd speak on one thing, and even at that time I didn't actually mean to say that. And I'm not going to speak on what you heard me say I was going to speak on last week, but we'll talk about something else. Some of you are indicating that you have no idea what I'm talking about. I hope the rest of the sermon goes better than that. Genesis 39, another case study in obsession. And again, you might be thinking, another case study? When was the last one? The last one was in our Thursday night class. And may I take this opportunity to invite you to our Thursday night class. Let me say this. When someone is not there, everyone loses. Another case study. Our Thursday night class, we talked about Haman and how Haman was so obsessed with Mordecai. He wanted Mordecai's reverence, and Mordecai wouldn't give it to him, and Haman ended up dead, hanging on his own gallows. That's another case study for another day. This is from Genesis 39. It's about Potiphar's wife. Things go both ways. Men are not the only ones to be obsessed. Women can be also. We'll begin by looking at the object of obsession. The first point is that the object is always attractive. Verse 1. Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. And Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. Now, for you ladies, I've heard that the expression, I believe, is, "I love a man in a uniform." I don't know if this applies to every woman out there. But generally speaking, the idea is, well, it's prevalent enough that I love a man in a uniform. And I know for ladies, if I love a man in a uniform is true, a successful man is even more so. In fact, there have been scientific studies that women marry up and men marry anywhere. The more successful a woman is, the less likely she is to marry because the pool of more successful men diminishes. The more successful a woman is, the less likely she is to find somebody who's qualified to marry. The less successful a man is, the less likely he's to marry because the woman won't have him. Women like a successful man. That's what we have here in Joseph. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. I don't think Mrs. Potiphar was as much so impressed by the Lord being with him. I don't think she gets that. But she gets prospering. And that's another, there's somebody who's successful. That's attractive. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him overseer of his house, and all that he owned he put in his charge. Now, you have to understand that this likely, I can't say for sure, but this likely made him more free than the wife. Joseph probably had more freedom, although he was a slave, than Mrs. Potiphar did back then. In fact, in verse 9, Joseph will say, "There is no one greater in this house than I am." I'm not suggesting that this necessarily implies that he's including Mrs. Potiphar, but it likely could have. Anyway, he had a lot of freedom. Verse 5, "It came about from that time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he owned. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. Thus the Lord's blessing was upon all that he owned in the house and in the field." So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. This guy has it all. Back then, yeah, he was a slave, but this guy, he was high rankings, very successful, good-looking man. He had it all. And that was maybe the problem. No, that wasn't the problem. That's what we'll talk about in this lesson. The second thing about the object is that it's unavailable. Verse 7, "It came about after that his master's wife," and there's the problem. He, Joseph, is not her master. That means he's not married to her. She's married to somebody else. So this attractive object is not available to her. Now, there will be different reasons, and that is hugely important to understand. We'll look at it. But there are different reasons why some object is not available. This one is because God set it up that way. You have a husband, and the object is avoidable. I know this because, listen carefully, "No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man, and God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it." All objects that become obsessions are attractive, unavailable, and avoidable. Now, we're going to get into the one who is obsessed in just a minute. But before that we do that, I want to look at some things really quickly about this object. There is a line between observing and obsessing. The opportunity to see is not an invitation to sin. Probably put a marker here. Turn to Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon, chapter 3, verse 6. What, my version says what or who. The question begins by it's getting your attention. Who is coming up from the wilderness? I don't know. Who? And that's what the author wants to do. That's what's going on. Who? What's happening? Let's focus on whatever this is. Like columns of smoke. Now we'll see this as Solomon. He's coming with his chariot. I'm guessing this is talking about the amount of dust he's creating as he comes in the plane. I don't know that for sure. That would be impressive. Look at all this smoke. These columns of smoke coming. And that's saying, look how magnificent his entourage is. Perfumed with myrrh, frankincense, with all scented powders of the merchant. Ooh, nice. Behold, it is the traveling couch of Solomon. Anybody here have a traveling couch? Some of us do in a way. Nobody had one back then. When the traveling couch came, you said, wow. Now that's impressive. 60 men around it. This is the wedding party, we'll see. When's the last time, did you have 60 men in your wedding party? I don't think so. I didn't. 60 men of the mighty men of Israel. All of them are wielders of the sword, expert in war. Each one has a sword at his side, guarding against the terrors of the night. King Solomon has made for himself a sedan chair. Now listen to this chair. With the timber of Lebanon. That's a big thing back then. We'll get the next part. He has made its posts of silver, its back of gold, its seat of purple fabric, its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem. Now listen. Go forth, O daughters of Zion, and gaze on King Solomon with the crown. This is one lady who caught this one, saying to the other ladies, ladies, look what I have. Look, gaze. And here's the point. This is not an invitation to sin. No, when somebody's blessed, directly or indirectly, you say, good for them. Yes, that's great. I mean, don't we all want to be blessed? Yeah, I'll take some blessing. And right now, it's that person's time to be blessed. How wonderful it is that that woman is blessed with that guy. Wow. But it's not an invitation to sin. Look, but don't let your mind go too far. Now, here's the point. This is true of life. That's what life is. If you haven't figured it out, life is walking down the street, seeing a whole bunch of attractive things, but having to say, hey, that's nice. In fact, in the song later, he'll say that the woman's body is formed by an artist. Yeah. But that's it. Okay. And then you walk down the street, you see something else, you say, man, I like that thing. And you say, okay, that's it. I like it. I can't obsess over it. That's what life is about. That's why we have to get this so importantly. Now, the other thing I want to say about this object is that different things appeal to different people. For Haman, he wanted Mordecai's reverence. That has no appeal to me that I know of. So far, I'm not up for that. But somebody out there, there's something for everybody, isn't there? There's something for everybody. Ahab wanted Naboth's vineyard, a garden. Now, I like gardens. I'd like to have the reeds. I like that. But he sinned because they went too far, right? This morning we talked about Simon in class. He wanted power. He wanted prestige. That's what he wanted. But here's the deal. Those are kept from them primarily because of sinful inherently. Not all of it, not the power necessarily. A lot of it was inherently sinful. He couldn't have that garden because God had set it up in the law that the garden stays in the family and you're not in the family, so you can't get it. Okay, so some things are inherently sinful. Listen to this. I read this week. The only reason a great many American families don't own an elephant is that they have never been offered an elephant for $1 down and easy weekly payments. Here's the point. This is a tactic. Gary and I were talking about this. I think it was Gary and I were talking about this. You go down to the store. They're waiting for you to lose your focus. You go into the store for milk and bread and you come out with 50 things. This is why. Because you have lost your focus. It's the same thing spiritually. This is what we need to focus. If you get this, the rest of this will be taken care of. The rest of it will not be a problem. So we got to get this part first. We must obsess and focus on only that which is spiritually profitable. Now, let me tell you, this really narrows things down. And I'm not talking about only things that are not sin. don't even look there. So, focus only on the things that are not sinful. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying of the class of things that are not sinful, you only focus on a select few of even those. That's how you win. That's what we have to obsess on. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul speaks and he says in verse 23, all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but not all things edify. Now, the realm of edification is in verse 24. Let us not seek our own good, but that of his neighbor. Because God tells us who we love. We love God. We want to please God. He tells us to love each other. So the only things we really need to focus on are things that directly encourage me to focus on God and focus on each other lovingly. That's it. If it doesn't fit in that category, then be careful. Verse 24 of chapter 9. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Now this is how difficult the race is. Run in such a way that you may win. Focus only on what is profitable. Not don't focus on sin. Of course don't focus on sin. But of all the things that are lawful, only focus on those that will be helpful. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. Yeah, the runner, the athlete, the Olympic athlete, focus is why they win. It's why they're there. It's because they have focused, right? Hebrews chapter 12. Now, you may recognize some of this from a discussion in our previous Sunday class. May I take this opportunity to encourage you to come to Sunday class also. Because when one person is not there, we all lose. So yeah, the congregation has a class on Thursdays. Do come, especially if you're a member. And Sundays also. We encourage you. We all win when we're in class. 1 John 3, I'm camping out there. I don't need to be there. I want to be in Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 12, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us. The sin is one category. Get rid of sin, yes. And then there's the category of things that are lawful, but some of them trip us up. Some of those we shouldn't even be focused on. Here are some uninspired commentators, but they say it so clearly. The Christian's runner, this guy is taking both passages we just read and putting them together, must rid himself even of innocent things which might slow him down. And all that does not help hinders. There is no middle ground. All that does not help hinders. Worldly cares, riches, and honors, when immoderately pursued, that means you've lost it, you're going too far, are a weight depressing the mind into the earth. If my mind is focused on this, it just pushes it down, pushes it down, pushes it down. And the great hindrance in the work and service of God, and therefore are to be laid aside. Not that they are to be entirely rejected and not cared for and used, but the heart should not be set upon them or be overly anxious about them. Now, this brings us back to the one who is obsessed. The one who is obsessed on the wrong thing doesn't get this. So if you got this, if everybody raise their hand right now and says you got this, I'll sit down. But because not all people get this, and I've been in the not get, and sometimes I slip. So we need to talk about this now. The obsessor. The first thing about the obsessor is that the obsessor rejects God. Because as soon as you've rejected focusing on, we will see things that are attractive all the time. But as soon as you start to focus on the thing that is attractive, but is not spiritually helpful, then we're starting to slip away from God. We haven't even gotten to sin yet. Verse 39, it came about after these events that his master's wife looked at with desire at Joseph and she said, lie with me. Now, Mrs. Potiphar had a need, and God gave her the God-given answer to that need, Mr. Potiphar. The second she went outside of Mr. Potiphar, she rejected God. And here's the thing. She most likely knew it. Egyptians, at this time and before, do you remember when Abraham went down in Genesis chapter 12? He was worried. She was good looking. And he said to her, you're good looking and they're going to kill me. Because the Egyptian would rather murder than commit adultery. They knew what adultery was. She knows what she's doing. She rejected God. In fact, Joseph will say in verse 9, there is no one greater in this house, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great evil and sin against God? It seems that he knows. You know about God. You know what's going on here. Now, here's the deal. All things, all true needs, which is really what we should only be focusing on. We have enough trouble focusing on true needs. That's really all we need to deal with. All true needs are only fulfilled in God. So, her true need, this is one specific. What we're looking at here is general principles, patterns that you'll see in somebody who obsesses to the point of sin, no matter what the obsession is. It itself might not be inherently sinful. Hers was. But you'll see the same pattern over and over. She rejects God. Then she rejects reason. Verse 8, but he refused and said to his master's wife. Now you listen here for anything that she doesn't already know. Okay? She knows it all already. That's my point. Behold, with me here my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns under my charge. She knows this already. She's thought of this 1,000 times. At least she used to. There is no one greater in this house than I. She knows that. And he has withheld nothing from me except you. She knows all of this. But she no longer cares. If she ever did think about it, she no longer does. Because she has given herself over to be completely controlled by her instincts. That's what's going on. Jude will say, the things which they know by instinct, like unreasoning animals. Who in here wants to be characterized as an unreasoning animal? No, but that's exactly the person who has lost his way, being blown around like a ship in a storm. Any way the wind blows, I'm going because I have no control of myself. Is like an unreasoning animal. It doesn't matter if it's inherently sinful or not. By these things they are destroyed, Jude will write. I will say that intervention must happen. I think I meant to write intervention. It was late last night when I did this one. I don't even know that word. It fits right now. Intervention needs to happen. Intercession does too. But what I meant is intervention. Somebody needs to get in there and stop it. When? I might not know. No temptation has overtaken you such as is common to man. God is faithful who will not allow you to... I don't know exactly when it was. I read recently about chaos theory. And the question is, you probably heard it. If a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon in Brazil leads to a hurricane that is catastrophic in Texas, kills people, should intervention have happened if we could? Well, yeah. But when? I don't know. But it should have. Emerson said, any time is a good time if you know what to do with it. No, he meant something else. Yeah, any time. I don't know when intervention exactly. Actually, I kind of do have some hints. Two passages we need to turn to. Keep your finger here or your marker in 39. 2 Corinthians. I don't think these are up there, so... Oh, yeah, they are. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. Hey, look at that, brother. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And, listen, we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. This is life. This is the issue. You got this figured out? You're all done. So I know generally, what needs to happen, this person needs to intervene in their own mind. I saw it, but now I've taken it too far. I got to get back control. Here's in James 1, it says much the same thing. Verse 13, let no one say when he is being tempted, I'm being tempted by God. So that's what you don't do. Why not? Because God doesn't try to trip you up, okay? God will test you, but God doesn't try to trip you up. He offered you salvation. He's not going to do that. But if it's something that's going to end up negatively, it's your own fault. He'll say it here. Verse 14, each one is tempted when he's carried away and enticed by his own lust. You see it, and you say, hey, that's nice. And then because you naturally want it, this person, if they're not careful, will let themselves dwell. I see it, I say, that's nice. Fine. Later on, I still say that's nice. Okay, fine. But when you go to, and I want it. So when does intervention need to take place? Between see and not sin. Although yes. But between see and I'm no longer focusing on that as what is profitable. I need to focus on what's profitable. That's it. Oh, I'm starting to be distracted. It's not even sinful what I'm looking at. But if you're being distracted from what's profitable, intervention needs to happen. At any point thereafter. All right? Whenever you lose control, I went from see to dwell, and now I've given myself away. Well, intervention needs to happen any time there, right? But this person rejects even repentance. Verse 10 says that she spoke to Joseph day after day. She never repented. That's sad. I can't think of anything sadder other than what this person turns into. Verse 12, two more points. She rejects relationships, good ones, and she rejects common decency. She just turns into an animal. She caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled outside. And when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, fled outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, see, he has brought in us, he, that is her husband, has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice, he screamed, I screamed. He left his garment beside me and fled and went outside. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, the Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came in to me to make sport of me. And as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside. When his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, that is what your slave did to me, his anger burned. She rejected two relationships. I might suggest that the one with Joseph was actually more important. I know God set up her and her husband, so I don't want to diminish that. But Joseph was blessed by God. Joseph had God with him. And she was willing to cast off that relationship. Can you think of anything worth that? I can't. Here's a child of God, and my obsession takes me so far that I am willing to cast off, reject, even harm a child of God. How sad. Mr. Potiphar, I don't know much about him. He seemed to have been a good man, only in that he identified another good man, and he was himself a man in position of authority, of trust. He had to have some good about him. And she's willing to forsake it all. Just get rid of it. She didn't care. Her passion became other people's pain. And she didn't care. That's it. I don't care. Now, two suggestions for you. Two litmus tests. If you have to lie because of what you want, then what you want is wrong. If you can get what you want only when God's faithful children are not looking, that is in secret. then what you want is wrong. This existence is selfish, this existence is miserable, and this existence ends in hell. Johnny Cash spoke of a drug addiction. What he said was, I was taking the pills for a while, and then the pills started taking me. That's not from a happy place. This is the same thing. You've seen it. Again, it might not even be, I'm attacking something that's inherently sinful. It just might be a brother in the Lord or sister in the Lord who knows better, but yet has given himself over to not trying. Could you imagine living in that situation? Sadly, it happens too often. Falling in love with God all over again. A couple points and then we'll be done. How? So recently, Miss Rhonda said to me, her subordinate clause was this. When some people say that they don't get much out of class, and I'll stop there. When some people say they don't get much out of class, you know, I've been there. I've been there. I didn't get much out of class. I've been there when it's my fault. That's what we're getting at. It's true. It happens. What I'm about to read to you is a rant by a Bible class teacher, but it's a valid one. I just want you to listen to it. Bible class teachers are a hardy lot. They have to be to continue to teach when, in spite of all their ability, dedication, and preparation, they repeatedly are blamed for dry and boring classes, or for not provoking enough class discussion. And I get there, myself, I walk out of here more Thursdays thinking, man, did I ever deliver a lame class. But there are times when it's the teacher, and then there are times when it's not. You've got to be honest here. Teachers who, I just missed a class. Bible classes are a two-way proposition, okay? Teachers who prepare the lessons well and teach in the way that is most comfortable to them ought not bear all the guilt when a class is less than exciting. They cannot stimulate edifying discussion among students who have done little or no diligent study at home. And we recognize this is true. This is everywhere. It has been my experience that the only students who have worthwhile comments to make in class are those who have primed their pumps by hard, honest study at home. Those who have primed their pumps at home do not have to be cajoled into speaking up. They are excited about what they learned and are ready to share it. Those who have not will not contribute to the class simply because they have nothing to contribute. Among students who have studied, the teacher never has to work very hard to promote the class discussion. Perhaps we forget occasionally that students as well as teachers can be boring. But here's the point. It happens. Now, that student is still out there in the class. And there's still something in that student where if you ask that student, hey, I can see that you're not so thrilled right now, but would you like to be? There's something in that student, that person, that Christian, that would say, yes, I want to be. I really do. Some part of me wants to be. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be here. I mean, I know you can be here and not even want to be here. I get that. But a lot of times, yeah, I recognize this isn't me. How is it that that person, they're on fire? You can see they love God. How? How can I get there? That's what I want. And I'll tell you, I've been there. I've been the one. All right, I'll go to church. It's been many years. But I recognize this is not healthy. And I know love is a choice. Love is a choice. That's the issue here. So how can I get from, to I love these words. I love what they do. Two suggestions. Consider Ezra 10. Oh, by the way, this is from our Thursday class again. You might recognize this if you were in the class just recently. I will encourage you that, hey, when one of us misses, we all miss. And I realize there are things that go on, but then I realize that things go on in everybody's life, and we try. So Ezra 7, hey, what about this guy? It says in Ezra chapter 7, this one young man, in chapter 7, verse 10, that he set his heart to study the law of God, to practice it, to teach his commandments. And I'll jump ahead to this Thursday class. And when it was brought to his attention that people were in sin, he grieved. How did he get there, I wonder? How did he end up having the same grief, to some degree, that God the Father had over sin? It just naturally, some things naturally come for some people. No! He set his heart. It takes focus, determination. This is what I will do. Purpose. I will set my heart. And I know I'm not Mr. Zealous right now, but I want to get there. And I know it'll take a little setting of the heart. Revelation. Here is a situation where they have lost their first love. Maybe somebody's never been to really, really, really love God. So the same principles apply. But there are some here who says, look, verse 4, Revelation 2:4, I have this against you. You have left your first love. And they, if they're being honest, say, yeah. They're even in Bible class when they hear this. So not just because you're coming to Bible class doesn't mean you love the Lord. All right? They're in Bible class. They're wherever they are, and they hear this and they say, you know, I've been thinking about that myself. When you say it, I know it's true. Lord, please give me something that can help me. Oh, look at the next verse. Remember from where you have fallen. Yep. I remember my good old days with God. I remember that. Repent. Change your mind. Yep, like Ezra, set your heart on the Lord. And then do the deeds. That's it. That's the answer. Do you want to? I want to love the Lord. Here's the answer. And God will see your heart and say, He does. And He's there cheering you on, giving you everything you need. And as long as you bring faith and love, He will take you and pull you to where you need to be. He wants that. This will take focus, this will take sacrifice, this will take dedication. Let me suggest to you that this is a heart problem. But as I heard yesterday, your child has an organ problem. And then the next words are the words you want to hear. But there's good news. Yeah, I've got a heart. God says you've got a heart problem. But there's good news. Lack of interest on spiritual things now is a symptom of lack of focus on spiritual things later. If you keep in mind where your current path is driving you, and you're focused on where you'll end up, and you care, and you want to be with God forever, then the rest will take care of itself. I don't love the Lord, I want to. Well, you just keep on thinking about the Lord. And after judgment, you keep on thinking about that. Make it worth your while. It will be worth your while. It will take sacrifice. A priest said to a poor farmer, this is not necessarily true, literally, but the point is, if you had a horse, would you give it to the Lord? Yes, the poor farmer answers. If you had a cow, yes, absolutely, the poor farmer answers. About a goat? How about a goat? Would you give it to the Lord? Sure. How about a pig? No, that's not fair, protested the farmer. You know I have a pig. That's what it takes. Sacrifice. Look, this is what I want this. God says, I know you do. What do you want more? It'll take dedication. There was an airplane fighter pilot in World War I. Some of you have heard of his name, Eddie Rickenbacker. He was a Medal of Honor recipient. He had more aerial victories, 26 of them. In World War I, he was called the Ace of Aces, you may remember. He had more awards of valor than any other American up until then. He received the Distinguished Service Cross 8 times. All for what he did while he was flying his airplane. Here's the thing. When he first started flying, it made him sick. But he was so determined that he would get in his airplane. Back then they were open. He'd get in his airplane, he'd fly up until he puked. He'd come back down, he'd recover, and he'd do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. They say it takes something like 3 weeks of this to get beyond it. I don't mean to liken loving the Lord to puking out of an aircraft. But the point is this: if you want it badly enough, you can learn to acquire the taste. Nikolai yesterday received his first insulin shot. He didn't like it. He was a little nervous. But it won't be very long before it becomes an old friend. And in fact, he'll probably soon forget life without it. Because it's worth it. If you have been struggling in your love to the Lord and you want more, the church is here to encourage us. That's our purpose. We're going to sing a song of invitation. We encourage you to come up front and let us know. Sit down in that chair right there. Somebody will come over and talk to you and say, hey, how can we help? If you have never committed your life to the Lord, then you are in danger of being condemned to hell forever. Nobody wants that. We can help you. You need to hear the gospel, believe it, repent of your sins, confess Jesus as Lord, and be baptized and have your sins washed away. If this invitation appeals to you, let us know as we stand and sing the song that's been chosen.
Number 466, I know whom I